I'm going to have to try it one more time. Good morning, everyone. All right. Impressed me that you have awakened. Just one brief announcement. One of the characteristics of these conventions is that it's always a wonderful thing for us to come together. And in coming together, part of our reason for being here is that we want to really deepen our recognition of life's cycles and the patterns that are impressed on every one of our lives and our living. At the start of our convention, we had a wonderful opportunity to celebrate someone's life and someone's work. Dr. Kannan, in his book that he had written, which had just been released, and we had the opportunity to inaugurate that book. It was something that has been a life work for him. And I have to say, the way the timing worked on that day, I was thinking it might not even happen. Because as we moved along in our schedule, we kept looking for Dr. Kannan to arrive and to sit over there. And every time we looked, he wasn't there. So at the end of my president's address, the video, I was thinking, well, the program is ending and we'll have to do Dr. Kannan's book at a later date. And then we looked and there he was. Wonderful. But Dr. Kannan, if I'm not mistaken, was about 97. And I say was because about a half hour ago, Dr. Kannan passed. And it's something that, again, always it is the case that we miss those people who have added so much to our life and to our work. But it's also a time for us to recognize that this is a part of the cycle that we are engaged in. One of the beautiful things with Dr. Kannan is that during the course of his life, he did much to benefit others, which is the example that we would hope we would be able to repeat in our own lives. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to, together, take a moment to be thankful that such a man as this has been here among us, and to remember that just like the sun rises and sets for all of us, that this is a time that we can use to give something back. So if we could just have just a moment of thanks for the life that has been lived and commitment to the example and the lives which we have yet to live. Thank you.
We will start with the universal prayer. Please remain, you can please stand up. All hidden life vibrant in every atom. All hidden light shining in every creature. All hidden love embracing all in oneness. May all who know themselves to be one with Thee know they are therefore one with every other. Please be seated. has been said that those who work unselfishly for the progress of humanity are never abandoned, but they are always protected and enfolded with peace, harmony, and blessedness. So we begin this panel discussion expressing our sadness on the passing to the higher life of Dr. A. Cannon, who has been a long-time resident in this campus. And we also remember his outstanding contribution to the work of the Theosophical Society. And we extend our deepest sympathy to Mr. Sarojini Kannan, to K.J. Shri, to K.J. Kumar, and the entire Kannan family. But our work has to go on. This panel discussion this morning has as its subject our work a field beyond thoughts. I'm privileged to introduce to you the panel members. To my left is Professor C.A. Shinde, who is a retired zoology professor and who worked at Sangli and Pune for 37 years. He has been a life member of the Theosophical Society since 1975, and he has conducted many seminars, was the director of the School of the Wisdom here. He is also a national lecturer for the Indian section. He has had articles published in the Theosophist and a number of other theosophical journals. He is the compiler of the book The World Around Us, which gathers the editorials written by Mrs. Radha Bornier during many years of her presidency of the Theosophical Society. To his left is Ms. Clemice, who is a long-term member of the TS in Brazil, and with a special interest in the teachings of J. Krishnamurti, H.P. Blavatsky, and Annie Besant, among others. She has been helping at Adyar in the International Secretary's Office for almost 2 years, and has given several talks at Adyar and written articles for the Theosophist. She loves India and has made Adyar her home, and currently she is the head of the editorial office. To her left is Minor Lile. He was the executive director and resident manager at Intralaya camp for nearly 20 years in the U.S. He's a national lecturer for the Theosophical Society in America and also serves on the board of directors. His interests include long-distance walking and looking for the often hidden presence of the wisdom tradition in contemporary culture. His educational background includes a master's in business administration and a master's in spiritual direction. He lives in Orcas Island in Washington State, USA. Last but not the least, Tran-Thi-Kim-Dieu. She was born in 1949 and joined the TS in 1972. She is postgraduate in pharmaceutical technology. She is the chairperson of the European Federation and a former general secretary of the French section. She has been giving monthly courses at the Paris headquarters since 1987, worked at Adyar International Headquarters, has been helping to publish theosophical literature in Russian, Hungarian, Estonian, Slovenian, Croatian, and has revived TS activities in Eastern Europe. She has been guest speaker at summer schools, seminars, and congresses, European School of Theosophy at the Crotona Institute, and the School of the Wisdom at Adyar. She has toured many countries, including New Zealand, Singapore, Philippines, Australia, and Canada. Her main concern is to promote an authentic way of living guided by universal ethics and mystic dimensions of consciousness. The panel will address some suggested questions. But before we address those questions, I would like to remind us of a passage from the Majjhima Nikaya, one of the discourses of the Buddha, in which it is said a wanderer came to the Buddha's presence with questions. His name was Vachagota. And he asked the Buddha, "Is there a permanent self in man?" The Buddha was silent. Then he said, "Is there not a permanent self in man?" The Buddha was equally silent. At that point, Vachagota left. So next to the Buddha was Anand, not Polande, but the original Anand. And Ananda asked the Buddha, why did the Tathagata remain silent during the questions of Vachagota? And the Buddha said, "Anand, listen. If the Tathagata had said yes to the first question, a whole school of thought would have been formed. If the Tathagata had said no to the second question, a whole school of thought would have been formed. Anand, listen. The Tathagata has no view." I think it's a sobering statement for those who are going to engage in a discussion. So the first question, what is your view of the essential work of the Theosophical Society? There is a microphone that needs to be turned on. Since you touched the microphone, would you like to? Yes.
I thought I'd chosen a safe seat. Good morning, friends. Good to see you all here. It would surprise me if a school of thought developed out of my response to this question, but one never knows, so I will be careful in what I say. In fact, would you mind repeating the question just so we all kind of have a sense of it in our mind?
Yes. The question is, what is your view of the essential work of the Theosophical Society?
In my mind, the essential work of the Theosophical Society is very well summarized in our newly adopted mission statement. To serve humanity by cultivating an ever-deepening understanding and realization of the ageless wisdom, spiritual self-transformation, and the unity of all life. Our work as members of the Theosophical Society, perhaps, is to invite those with whom our lives connect to be aware of the opportunity to be of service in this world. And the work of the Theosophical Society is, again, to provide this service to humanity in whatever ways each of us as individuals and collectively are capable of doing.
Thank you. Who's next?
I think it is important. Our essential work is to serve humanity by humanizing oneself. And I think it is important to consider what our founders expressed their view when they openly said the Theosophical Society neither teaches new religion nor destroys old one. It has no of its own creed. It follows no religious leader. Keeping these views at the background of our mind, let our concern be, that is our essential work, our concern be tolerance towards all faiths, encouraging individual, especially individual freedom in search of truth, and loving service for others and not for ourselves. As HPB openly said, you cannot do good to yourself without doing good to others. And more importantly, our concern is about our personal responsibility in all aspects of life.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to answer this question with this short story, if you don't mind. It's a story that came to me some 2-3 years back when I was discussing with a friend in India. And this question came not about the Theosophical Society, but about the spiritual search. Sorry. So, let's imagine that when we are about to be born, we are our souls, let's call it soul, that which is eternal and never dies. The souls all stand on line to wait their instructions about the work they should do down here. And as we approach, there is a deva, and this deva, there is a running river, which is the consciousness of humankind. And this deva picks up a bucket of water from that river and gives to us and says, this river is polluted and needs to be cleaned. The pollution being greed, envy, lust for power, selfishness as a whole. And it says, go down and clean it and bring to me a clean bucket of water. This is your job. And before you bring to me a clean bucket, a clean water in the bucket, you won't be free. You will be going again and again till the bucket with water is clean. As we come here, we forget about our job. For so to say, we sit on our bucket and start to talk about other people's bucket. What they are doing, what they are not doing, what they should do. But we don't realize what we are not doing. So our job is to clean this bucket and nothing else. So that's the only place where we can work, is in this bucket, to make it free from all pollution. Pollution being selfishness. So that is our individual work. And what is the work of the Theosophical Society then? An organization as the Theosophical Society is to provide a place for those who are serious, who really wish to do the job of cleaning this bucket. To provide a place where we can come together and work together. Each one in his bucket, not each one in each other's bucket. So, the first thing, and HPB had this dream to create a nucleus of universal brotherhood. What does that mean, universal brotherhood? Universal brotherhood is this coming together, working together, sharing our miseries and our happiness. Care for each other. Really care as we do in a family. And this nucleus of universal brotherhood will be caring for each other all over the world without the feeling of nationality, without the feeling of separation. So to me, that's the work of the Theosophical Society.
Thank you. Kim-Dieu.
For me, the work of the Theosophical Society was defined since the beginning. And it is like by some mystery in the universe, the first stone was thrown in the ocean of knowledge and of memory. This first stone was saying that the TS is meant to show to humanity that such a wisdom like theosophy exists. Everyone certainly knows by heart this quotation, this is a thorny way and yet, etc. I have bad memory to repeat it, but all of you know about this. So this is the first throne, the stone thrown in this ocean of knowledge by mystery, I don't know. And every president will give a tone for this. First wave, second wave, third wave, up to now, the current president would enlarge this wave of mission. This is in the mission. But at the core, the Theosophical Society has the mission, is to make known that such a wisdom exists for humanity. And why humanity needs to know that such a wisdom exists? Because humanity needs it. Because humanity, as called the orphan, the great orphan, need to be saved, need to be taught, need to be guided towards something higher, nobler, certainly more beautiful. Because it is now searching its way to find out beauty in the truth and the goodness. So our mission is that. And at every generation of president, we have an order of mission to follow. And it is just an emanation from the first one to make wisdom known to humanity.
Thank you. Yes, briefly. Our time is limited. You go.
Essential of the society's work. Society should provide, because I am a librarian, provide well-established and specialized libraries and archives for inquirers and scholars to do research on well-known occult work and try to recognize and realize the fundamental concept of all life is unity. Because when we are sharing one earth physically, one pattern chemically, one life biologically, one humanity socially, and one intelligence spiritually, to recognize and realize oneness of life, we need libraries as the laboratories for spiritual transformation.
Thank you. Can I appoint Minor as the microphone moderator? Can you park it on the table again? Unless you want to say something.
I'm happy to be the microphone moderator.
Very good. Well, I just would like to add very briefly, as Kim-Dieu said, there are some fundamental statements at the very beginning of the work of the TS which define its work. And in one of such statements from Madame Blavatsky, when the question was asked, what is the work of the Theosophical Society, she said, our work is to keep alive in man his spiritual intuitions. Of course, at that time, gender-inclusive language was not an issue, so we can translate that into a modern idiom by saying that the work of the society is to help in keeping alive in the human being his or her spiritual intuition. The very expression keeping alive implies that intuitions may come and disappear because of the nature of our minds. So, and I think that answer amalgamates the collective work of the society and the individual work of the individual member of the society. How to keep alive in ourselves spiritual intuitions. A spiritual intuition is not a hunch. According to certain books, like the Viveka Chudamani, when it dawns in the mind, there is a totally different understanding. But that understanding may disappear if the mind again becomes absorbed with self-created concerns. Anyhow, I'm just the moderator. I'm not supposed to speak much. Second question. In the booklet, Madame Blavatsky on How to Study Theosophy, we read, Madame Blavatsky here is talking about the serious study of theosophy as a form of jnana yoga, the yoga of wisdom or true knowledge. And she says, the true student will, however, work on unconcern, and presently further formless gleams come, which again in time give rise to a larger and more beautiful picture than the last. She was basically explaining that every time we study a book, we form some images. But when we come back to that book later on, perhaps a broader pictures will be formed. But the learner will now know that no picture will ever represent the truth. This seems to be a cardinal statement. No picture will ever represent the truth. This last splendid picture will grow dull and fade like the others, and so the process goes on until at last the mind is transcended and the learner enters and dwells in the world of no form. This expression is capitalized in the text. The learner enters and dwells in the world of no form, but of which all forms are narrow reflections. So my question to the panelists is, what are the implications of this statement by Madame Blavatsky for the work of the TS?
Rather than invite myself to answer first every time, I'll share that opportunity.
You see, he is slowly taking over, but I don't mind.
Can you repeat?
I'll repeat the question. The true student will, however, work on unconcern, and presently further formless gleams come, which again in time give rise to a larger and more beautiful picture than the last. But the learner will now know that no picture will ever represent the truth. This last splendid picture will grow dull and fade like the others, and so the process goes on until at last the mind is transcendent and the learner enters and dwells in the world of no form, but of which all forms are narrowed reflections.
I try to keep focused because it is too long a quotation. Sometimes when I come to the end, the first disappears in the mind. But I will try to say something. You see, by experience, I have met quite a lot of experts in the secret doctrine and in theosophy. But one observation I can make is that none of them agrees about the understanding of one concept, even about the hierarchies of creation. They discuss and then everyone wants to have his or her own expertise. So it is really a kind of vision from Madame Blavatsky, who had seen it, that it is so vast that nobody can seize one point and be an expert. Very, very often, theosophy as a science and a wisdom is compared to a diamond. Nobody can see the whole diamond in its whole totality of the facets, because one can see one facet, 3, 4, 3, 5, I don't know, but not the whole facet. How can we see the whole number of facets of a diamond? I think that the only way is to be above it, to see it from the above. It is meaning this intuition that you have quoted from the beginning. We cannot understand the whole doctrine of theosophy, the whole concepts, all the totality of concepts of theosophy, its own teaching, just by using the mind. Something should go beyond the mind, and this is really very important. We use the word intuition. We may use another word, does not mind, but we have to go beyond the mind to have this capacity to look from the above, to see all the facets of the diamond. And this, in this case, we cease to be an expert.
The ocean of wisdom is perhaps nearly as vast as the ocean of universal consciousness. And my own sense is that in our human experience, wisdom is the distillation of experience and insight accumulated over the course of an individual and numerous lifetimes. And as we proceed on our pilgrim's journey, as it's described in the theosophical tradition, we have the opportunity to gain wisdom, to gain insight through intuitive sparks, intuitive realizations, shall we say. When that intuition comes, when we awaken to that which is beyond this temporal reality, we are invited to remember that, whether it is momentary or long-lasting, we are invited to remember. I think this is summarized beautifully in the Rumi poem that is at the base of our explorations this week. The excerpt from this poem that is in our program guide is just part of a longer poem, and I think what follows that is especially relevant to this question. So as it says in our guide, when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. We are beyond the duality or trinity of life in this mundane world and have touched something more unitive. And the Rumi goes on, the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Now, each of us may have our own understanding of what this means. For me, at least in part, it means that when we have these intuitive realizations, when we awaken, let us endeavor to continue to incorporate those insights into our engagement with this world we find ourselves living in.
I think as Pedro in the beginning mentioned that in Key to Theosophy regarding Jnana Yoga, he has mentioned this statement. Jnana Yoga, which gives right direction to our thought, Bhakti Yoga improves the quality of the thought. So when it is more concerned with the thought, HPB speaks about this, transcending mind and its pictures. So in this, I think for the Indian tradition they know well, it is the journey from the world of form to the world of no form. That is what HPB has used. Rupa to Arupa. Journey not to seek new landscapes, but to have new eyes to see. New eyes to see more and more clearly. If one sees clearly, there is no question of selecting anything as such, or no question of becoming. In the world of form, man's focus is on having more and more. His focus is on becoming and not the being. I think, Pedro, looking at scientific way, it is said in Veda also, Vedanta is the end of all knowledge, freedom from known. So, if we look at scientific way, like a pendulum, the start of swing is all potential but no dynamic. Middle point showing is dynamic, all dynamic, but no potential. And end swing is all potential and no dynamic. So likewise, the Vedanta which speaks about the unity. All these merge in Sattva, three gunas. Sattva is the light of that abstract nature. Tamasa is its shade, and Rajasa is a blended tint oscillating between each extremes. So when we're speaking about a field beyond the thought, I think this we can keep in our mind.
Thank you.
Okay, I will share another, I will illustrate it again with a kind of picture or story. Suppose we want to climb a mountain, to come to the top where the afterthought, the beyond, the field beyond thought leads. We are on the bottom of the mountain and we have to climb till we are there on the top. How do we do that? On the way, as we climb, there are stones, and as we go up, we have to hold firm each stone. At the moment we are pushing ourselves up, we have to hold firm. But to climb higher, we have to let go that stone where we are holding firm. And that is a process that goes on until we are up on the top of the mountain. And then we will have the view, the total view. And then the stones that they were useful at the moment we were holding to them, but they also have to be, we have to let go them. So I think that is what Blavatsky wants to say when she says, each picture fades away as we formulate a new one until we are out of the mind process, which is the one making the pictures and forming the pictures.
Thank you. It was Joy Mills, a former international vice president of the TS, who lived here for some time. She was also national president of the TS in America and also national president of the TS in Australia. And in one of her presentations, she told us that if it was not for the questions asked by Mr. Sinnott, we wouldn't have the Mahatma letters. And she wrote perhaps the definitive commentary on the Mahatma letters, Reflections on an Ancient Wisdom. So the next question, which is not in your list, is, what is a question?
The question for me, for my understanding, is a call from the above for us to work upon it and find out the answer. It is the pre-answer. This is why Mrs. Besant, when she talked about questions and answers, she said, try to ask the right question because the answer is inside it.
My answer to that question is very succinct. A question is that which seeks an answer, and in doing so compels us forward into the next stage of our journey. In
my opinion, who asked the question? It is the intellect in man which is the dividing principle, which inquires, which asks questions, and takes the jump to the intelligence.
I think a question is an impulse that comes with this urge and with this kind of curiosity about something that we think we don't understand. And it is very important to keep questions without answers also, because the moment we answer a question, we close the door for further understanding. So to keep the question open, and especially those that are difficult to understand, I think it is more important than the answer itself. In that context, I think questions are far more important than answers.
Perhaps I would add that the well-structured question is comparable to a Zen koan.
Can you park it there? Now, the last quote for us to consider comes from the Mahatma Letters to AP Synod. It's the letter 111 in the chronological edition. If you read the Mahatma Letters, you will see that Mr. Synod is asking question after question. He wants to know more and more. And in this quote, the Mahatma is telling him to calm down. Not everything can be answered. And he says, I'm sorry, it's a long one again, Kim-Dieu, but it's my karma. So, he says, mind you, he's writing to AP Synod. You share with all beginners the tendency to draw two absolutely strong inferences from partly caught hints, and to dogmatize thereupon as though the last word had been spoken. You will correct this in due time. You may misunderstand us, are more than likely to do so, for our language must always be more or less that of parable and suggestion when treading upon forbidden ground. We have our own peculiar modes of expression, and what lies behind the fence of words is even more important than what you read. But still, try. Can I repeat it? I don't need to repeat it? So, the question to the panelists is, how do you understand the meaning of the expression, what lies behind the fence of words is even more important than what you read? Unpark the microphone.
I'd like to ask the professor to be the first to answer this question.
And the moderator fades away.
To know what lies behind the fence of words, especially when we think about the Mahatma letters, is very important to consider, because letters have many layers of meaning, many suggestions, rather many hints, and at the feet of the master it is clearly said, once the hint is lost, it is lost forever. So one needs to develop the habit of repeated reading, reading between the lines, because as I said, one hint is missed. It won't come again, because we have raised our consciousness to that level to receive that hint. And if you miss that, it is rather, we are not assured that whether we raise to that level or not. It is also important to know influences of our thoughts, of our words, of our intellect, how they influence us when we try deep into our own understanding of that, what we are reading. Thoughts are very cunning. They are also very clever to destroy our understanding. And of course, words are expression of thought. And intellect, as I said earlier, it is a dividing principle. So Pedro, in the beginning, he said, we need to, persons who are after intuition. So that intelligence need to be tapped, which has ability to observe without evaluation. I think this is what we have to think over.
It seems clear to me that what the master is saying in his response to Mr. Sinnott is that words, explanations can only carry us so far, can perhaps take us to the brink of realization or insight, but the intuitive dimension is beyond words, beyond explanations.
To understand beyond the fences of words, it is like not to look at the finger, but try to look at the moon.
I think we have a problem because we have such a loaded mind. So when we read something, the first thing the mind creates and projects an image about what we are reading. And maybe that is the fence that we should go beyond. So to not take it so seriously and just try to not create conclusions about anything that we read, and just keep open and read it again and read it again, and still be open for the next time, and never to conclude about anything we read, because these conclusions, they are really barriers for deeper understanding.
It's interesting to me that one of the thoughts that had gone through my mind in considering this question was exactly what Kim-Dieu shared, which is not to mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. So perhaps that's worth repeating.
Would like to add something, perhaps for fun. You have the fence of the words, and to go beyond it, you have many means. Either you cut the fence with a means, material means, you cut it, you have to find out the instrument. Or you have to climb over the fence. Yeah? You have to find a ladder. This ladder is our mind. Step by step, go there. The last means is just to fly over. Try to fly over. But without injecting some drug. Fly really and not imagine that you are flying.
Can the microphone be parked? No, stop. Professor Shinde has something. Time is running out. No, you can go ahead.
Regarding the word, I am very clear that the word has got its limits. And we know, as it is said, word Buddha is not a Buddha. The word tree is not a tree. So we must cross the fencing of words beyond. It is a temporary jump from personal to impersonal. That is why Krishnamurti says, instead of looking at tree, can we look through tree? The sky, the birds, the clouds. So one must try to cross this fencing of the world.
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Just to share something that Ramana Maharshi said about knowledge, which I found quite interesting. He said that knowledge is acquired ignorance.
Acquired ignorance. Shall I park the microphone?
Please. Regarding words, some of you may be familiar with the stories of Mullah Nasruddin. A friend came to visit him, and Nasruddin told him that he had made some very bad, bloodthirsty Bedouins to run. And the friend was very surprised because Nasruddin was a short man. And the friend said, "How did you do that?" And Nasruddin said, "It was very easy. I run and they run after me." Now we have come to the very last question. And because time is limited, the panel members may have to exercise conciseness. What is the reason or reasons why the Theosophical Society has never officially defined the nature of theosophy?
If I'm keeping track accurately, it is Clemice's turn to go first.
My feeling is that theosophy cannot really be defined, and so wisely the Theosophical Society never defined it. And if we do it at some point, at that point we are killing theosophy itself.
Shall I give you an additional microphone?
It reminds me of a saying in Tibetan Buddhism. There is a saying stating that 1,000 monks, 1,000 religions. So 23,000 members of the Theosophical Society, perhaps a little bit more, 27,000. There will 27,000 of theosophy, because every level of understanding of theosophy is valid in its own way. But with one sine qua non condition, understanding must move always beyond, and not to be stuck at one point, because it is called dogmatism. So move on, and move on. And just to have an echo with our president citing this beautiful piece of Rumi, there is another Sufi poet, perhaps less known, of the name of Khayyam, Omar Khayyam. He says, "The sun is rising, the caravan is moving. Please make haste."
My sense of the answer to the question that has been asked is that theosophy in our tradition has been left largely undefined to provide opportunity for growth and development as the society evolves, as culture evolves, as we respond to the times we find ourselves living in. That being said, I'd like to attempt the politician's trick of turning to the question I really want to answer, which is about, goes back to our society's endeavor to be of service to humanity. And I was inspired in my visit to Blavatsky Bungalow by one of the pictures, which was the picture of Rabindranath Tagore, who was a resident in the bungalow for many years, and want to conclude my remarks by sharing his brief verse on the nature of service. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy.
The question is direct. why theosophy is not defined? The answer is quite clear, because theosophy is in everything, and everything is theosophy. So it is abstract in nature. It is not a revelation, but more experiential, that transcends all human understanding. And basically, as I asked earlier, who wants definition? Is it not the wanting mind, not your mind, my mind, but the human mind which wants, which has the habit of describing, naming, concluding? And as it is clearly said, theosophy is shoreless ocean of wisdom. It has got its own shallows, its own depths. In the shallow, child can safely wade, and in its depths, giant can swim. So, it has got so much scope. It cannot be defined, and everybody has got scope to explore by his own experience, as everything is theosophy.
Thank you.
Because I said, the moment we define theosophy, we kill theosophy. I just want to ratify that we kill theosophy in the Theosophical Society. Because theosophy really cannot be killed at all.
Can you park the microphone for the last time there? It's switched off. Well, I would like, on behalf of all of us, to thank our panel members, Professor Shinde, Clemice, Minor, and Kim-Dieu, for their contribution. I would like to thank you for your attendance, and I would like to suggest that we observe just a couple of moments of silence in memory of Dr. Kenneth.